Bob Montgomery with the International Rescue Committee, or IRC, is an expert in refugee resettlement, immigration, and advocacy. And Mark Arabu, a Chaldean American and lifelong El Cajon resident. Welcome to Evening Edition.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bob, what can you tell us about the humanitarian crisis that is unfolding right now in Iraq as ISIS insurgents moves rapidly toward the north and the west, taking cities?
Sure. First, Peggy, let me say that in Iraq, there was, the beginning of this year, there was about 200,000 internally displaced people. About another 480,000 were displaced since the beginning of the year. And just in the last week, another 500,000 have been displaced from Mosul alone.
So more than 1 million Iraqis
internally
displaced.
Yes.
I see.
So the concern of the IRC and other NGOs that are operating there is how can we access these people, especially when hostilities are continuing, and meet this spike in needs that these people are going to have. For example, many people who are fleeing Mosul are leaving to Kurdistan, where they are safe, but there's a limited ability to meet their day-to-day needs. So the humanitarian organizations are going to have to ramp up our ability to access all these new refugees.
And Mark, how has San Diego's Iraqi community been reaching out to families and friends that are in Iraq right now, and what are they saying about the conditions right now?
Sure. For the Chaldean community, it's been a living nightmare, and that doesn't go away. A lot of families have lost contact with their relatives 6 days ago when the insurgents took over Mosul. And we've been doing prayer services. We organized a petition throughout the whole country, Michigan and California. We're talking to our members of Congress. We spoke to messages to President Obama and many other folks, but
and I want to get back to that, but when you were talking about the loss of connection, was that through the internet? There has been no communication, as far as you know, with the people that you've been talking to?
With the families that are talking to us, no connection whatsoever. So they're fearing the worst, and we're receiving hundreds of phone calls daily, and we're just trying to instill as much hope as we can, as much prayers as we can, and we're also elevating on the news cycle the messages that we need to support the UN and NATO. Hopefully we'll support a mass exodus of Christians all throughout the world.
Let me ask you about that. Why do you think that right now this insurgency is especially dangerous to Iraqi Christians?
Sure. Well, it's never been as bad as it is right now. And the reason is folks have been displaced from their homes. And previously, there were safe havens in Iraq, which were these villages, Mosul and Tikrit. And now, with them taking over these villages, families are displaced, have no place to go. And before they'd go to Syria and then resettle to other countries. Syria is just as bad. This is much broader than a certain community in a certain region. This is world implications on a very big scale.
Yeah, and I want to bring up Syria to Bob here. There's thousands of Syrian refugees that were living in northern Iraq, and now that ISIS is taking cities in the north, how's that impacting the Syrian refugees as well?
Right. Well, as you know, some years ago, there was about 1.5 million Iraqi refugees in Syria. Currently, we have about 200,000 Syrian refugees in Iraq. And the ability of the nonprofits and the humanitarian or aid organizations to meet the needs of all these refugees and internally displaced persons is more and more difficult with each day that goes by.
Do you think that the U.S. and even San Diego here in the Chaldean community, are we expecting more refugees from Iraq? Can they get out to get here?
Well, actually, in the short term, we'll probably see less, and I'll tell you why. Is because yesterday a flight that was scheduled out of Baghdad with 60 refugees destined for the United States was canceled. Today we have another 100 that were scheduled to leave, and that their flight is in jeopardy at this point. So if refugees can't, the ones who have already been approved and went through the rigorous security clearances and medical clearances and are looking to rejoin relatives that they've been separated from for years, their reunification is now in jeopardy. Also, because it's a regional problem, you mentioned the Syrians. Let's take a look at Lebanon. There's 4.2 million people in Lebanon, and about 1 million refugees from Syria have gone into Lebanon over the last few years. creating a huge crisis there. So will the neighboring countries like Jordan, Lebanon, Turkey be willing to accept a new wave of refugees?
And as you said, Mark, this is having global implications. Unfortunately, we are out of time. I want to let folks know there's a whole lot more of this information and your interviews on our website, kpbs.org. Bob Montgomery and Mark Arabo, thank you very much.
Thank you.